and on 5 keys to knowing who you are and creating an unstoppable tribe. So what is it that you're about to learn in this training? So we're going to go over things that identify who you are, identify how your culture impacts your networking, and how the world sees you versus how you see yourself. And then obviously how to be able to make those connections, to be able to connect to the network that you want or need or desire. So here are the goals for you for tonight. We're going to look at clarity, understanding, and movement. So there's has to be some sort of action that we need to take. It's not just learning information, it's not just writing, but there has to be some action at the end of this. Here's one of my favorite quotes. You cannot discover new oceans unless you have the courage to lose sight of the shore. And so when I think about networking, whether you're an extrovert or an introvert, networking comes with its own challenges because sometimes we don't know where to network, how to network, if we get to the right networking places, who do we approach, how do we approach, what message are we sending. So networking is really multimodal and expansive. So you need to be able to have the courage to lose sight of the shore, do something that's uncomfortable for you, but planned out. And so that's some of the stuff that we're going to go over. How do we transform ourselves to be a person that can network at the level that is required of us for our life and for our businesses? So here's a little bit about myself. So I was lovingly say I was conceived in Cuba, born in Spain, but proudly made in the USA. So that, in short, is really my history and my story. My family came from Cuba. They weren't allowed direct access to the United States way back in the day. And I was born in Spain. And so my grandmother was here in the US. She actually was dying of ovarian cancer. They called to Spain and said, you had to get there right away. And everyone was allowed to leave except me because I was Spanish citizen. And my mom, being the feisty, sassy woman that she still is, thank God at almost 86, she's a few weeks from 86, said, entró conmigo, sale conmigo. So she stayed behind like a day or two so that she could get me access out of Spain and here into the US. And so really I've been made here in the USA. So, when I talk about where I started and how things began, people always like to see the finished product, but I like to talk about the whole journey. And so these are pictures of a bakery. So when I was little, my mom worked at a bakery. And if you've ever worked at a bakery or know someone who works at a bakery or owns a bakery, bakers start at like 4 in the morning. So a lot of my childhood was waking up at 3, 4 in the morning, getting up, showering, getting dressed for Catholic school. So with my uniform on, and we would go to the bakery, and that picture on the top is a cot. I would sleep on a cot like that until about 7:30, when it was time to get picked up from the ride that she had for me to be able to go to school. So it wasn't all roses. Everything wasn't always nice and dandy. So a lot of my childhood was spent in a bakery, and that's why I love to bake. So here are some of the other connections that I've made. So because of the networking and because of the opportunities that I've had at speaking events or just with my own network, if you see, this picture I always keep, and today here in New Jersey, we're actually honoring the Make-A-Wish Foundation in New Jersey through the Jersey Mikes. So that picture is actually the Make-A-Wish founder, who actually was a friend and passed away a few weeks ago. So as you can see, one of the pictures is NPR. The other person, if you don't recognize him, you definitely recognize his brand. That is Brian, and Brian is the creator of UGG boots. So these are opportunities that that I've been blessed to be able to have across my journey in life. And it's because of the networking and the opportunities that you have. So if you see here, the middle picture, that's actually Sharon Lechter, who's written, I think, Rich Dad, Poor Dad. She has several other books that have been written, and look at how lovely she looks at me. She's so sweet. She's actually sold over 35 million books internationally and in the US. And here I am as of 2 years ago. So I want to share my whole journey with you, which is I'm a breast cancer survivor. And that was the day that I got my hair cut because it was falling off by the roots. And those are my children. And I was taking them out to dinner, and my hair fell out actually right before I was taking them out to dinner. And my oldest son, who you could see is right next to me, said, "Are we still going out to dinner? We can go through the drive-through, Mom." And I said, "I want to sit down somewhere. I'm not going through a drive-through. Are you embarrassed?" And he said, "No, are you?" And I was like, "Absolutely not." I said, "There's nothing wrong with me except I have no hair." And most of the time I actually forgot I didn't have hair. And so when people would stare at me, so, I grew up in Jersey, but I'm also like a New Yorker. So people would give me that look, and I'm like, "What are you looking at?" And then I'm like, "Oh, I have no hair." It wasn't like they were trying to be sassy with me. It took me a while to remember I had no hair. So why should you listen, right? Why should I listen? Well, I am very blessed. I'm one of 1% of licensed Latino clinical psychologists in the US. So that means both male and female. So I consider myself a bit of a unicorn because not many, unfortunately, in the field of psychology are able to achieve that stature. I've been named leading physician of the world. I'm Harvard trained. I've been named top psychologist for multiple years. I am considered a LinkedIn author. They take my stuff up into their channels. I was named a trailblazer in diversity and inclusion by LinkedIn. I do international keynote speaking, and I've been sourced in over 100 publications. So that's always fun. So if my kids don't listen to me, I know someone will. So are you ready? I'm sorry I keep moving this, but I want to make sure you see my slides. Are you ready for a transformation tonight? And I think that we're here because we are ready for a transformation, or you're listening to this on the replay because you are ready for a transformation and you want to be able to do something different in order to make that transformation. So I call it a paradigm shift. And what I'm going to share with you in the beginning of my presentation is actually something that I use a lot in some of my presentations, depending on the topic, but it's how do we transform? And that transformation comes from a paradigm shift. So we're going to go over some of the steps that are required for us to make that a paradigm shift in order to make that transformation. And what we want is to transform ourselves into a magnet where we're networking with others, and we can create the networks and the tribe that we want, not only for ourselves, for our life, but for our businesses. So step one always starts with confusion, and we want to go from confusion to clarity. And my experience with networking is that a lot of times people are very confused. Latinas, we're very social, and we love to talk, and we like to connect. And sometimes we don't understand that being social may not necessarily be the same as being in a networking situation. And sometimes we get stuck with a group of individuals rather than, as many people call it, working the room. And you work the room sometimes very strategically. So we want to go from confusion to clarity. So let me go over what confusion sometimes looks like. And we have old mindsets and new mindsets. So our old mindset, when we're networking, and it's happened to the best of us, we go network after network, we go with our business cards, we go with a pile of them, and what we want to do is like the game, right? And the game is get rid of as many of your business cards that you can and collect as many as you can. It's almost like Monopoly, go around twice and collect $200 when you pass go. And that's great, but it means nothing if you don't utilize those connections. And so you should always have a pen. So let me just say that to start, you should always have a pen with you when you're networking, because when you're done, or when you're done with that conversation, if someone hands you a business card, you should write on the back something you remember about that person. Some of them don't have pictures. Mine, towards the end, when I realized, how to really strategically network, would have my picture on it so that people could remember who it was and who they were speaking to. So before we are great at networking, we think, well, maybe I should just give up. Maybe this isn't for me. Maybe it's really not all that it's cracked up to be. Maybe I got enough cards. Maybe it's great that I make a friend out of here. Why is this not working? I go to networking event after networking event. I go to conferences. I go to different talks and it's not working. I'm not getting any business leads. I'm not getting any connections. No one's connecting with me. Am I missing something? What is wrong with me? Why is this not working? That's really the old mindset. And we want to go from that confusion to really the new mindset and clarity. So we want to be able to gain clarity in the choices that you make on the information you had where you stand today. So when you're at that networking, you really need to prepare before the event the information that you need at hand. One of the things that I do for networking events is I prepare ahead of time who is going to be in the room with me. So if I'm a speaker, I want to know who all the rest of the speakers in the room are with me. So that's the first thing. I may not know the audience until I get there, but I at least want to have made connections with the people that I'm speaking with. And if I wasn't able to make the connection beforehand, I definitely make a connection afterwards. So information leads to be able to make powerful choices and powerful decisions. So you want to gain that clarity from the get-go. So realization that your purpose isn't necessarily tied into your job title or your status, but rather your impact and your influence. So when you go into networking, a lot of people say, well, I'm just the secretary. And I've heard this from people that are high up. I'm just the VP, right? And like, you're just not that. There's more than that. What is the vision? What is the impact? And what is the influence? So when you go into a room, even here, when you guys have your own meetings and you're doing your Comadres, you know, what impact and what influence do you have in the world? A lot of Latinas, we undercut ourselves. We don't realize how strong and how powerful we are and what we have to offer. So we want you to connect with your sense of purpose and your destiny because you want to live a life of legacy. You want to be remembered and known for doing great things for others. That's really, especially Latinas, like we want to be able to give, and serve in the greatest ways possible. So when there's completion from clarity, you know who you are and what that purpose is. And that's the same thing for networking. You need to know what your purpose is for networking. Why am I there? And what am I gaining from this? And what am I giving? Because that's also very crucial. And my arrow button is now stuck. Okay. Step 2, which is really why we use networking, right? But step 2, this is for any transformation. We have to build a bridge, right? We're going from gaps. Can you hear me now? We want to be able to build from gaps to bridging. So that's our second step to transform. And that's really what we have to do in order to transform our networking and our collaborations and the strength that we have in the power of our networks. So when we have an old mindset when it comes to this, we don't have the resources, we don't have the network that we need, we sometimes don't have the skills, we don't have the mindset to invest in ourselves, and we have minimal or no support or the wrong type of support. So what do we need in order to bridge, right? So to get rid of some of those gaps? We have to immediately identify within our immediate network what are the resources that we have. So one of the activities, remember I told you that we would have towards the end, like there's movement, right? Like we need to do something. So one of the exercises that I want you ladies to do whether you do it during the Q&A or you do it like right after we get off the call, is really to write down who are your list of network. Who do you really feel comfortable with? And who can you continue to develop a relationship with? And now, because we're all quarantined and we're all Zooming together, right? Networking looks a little differently. And there's a lot of networking online, and some people don't like to network online, but we have to transition some of that into online as well. So we need to create and build a network that builds your net worth. I had an opportunity to speak on Saturday at an event actually in London. And I met this woman at another event years ago in London. We've been in touch here and there. So we've kept our relationship, friendly. And so we had exchanged numbers. She WhatsApped me actually a few weeks ago and said, "Are you available on the 27th? I have an event that I'm putting on and I really, really want you to speak there." She said, "I love the message that you send and I really want you to speak there." And so we made it happen, and I was able to actually stay longer than what I was supposed to, or I could stay. Things shifted in my calendar. And at the end of it, she reached out to me and she said, "You were just so humble with your message." She said, "I'm putting out my magazine after going in hiatus for a while. I would love you to grace the cover of the magazine." So your network really builds your net worth. So I want you ladies to remember that we're connecting to serve. And we serve when someone serves us as well, because we're serving a greater capacity. So how do we gain different skills, additional skills, or diversify the skills that we already have? That is through our network. And our network should be not only individuals that we are comfortable with, but we need to build a network that grows with us. So we also need to have people that we think are out of our reach, and people that are younger than us, even if we may think they're out of our reach as well. So we need to also invest in our growth and build that tribe of like-minded. That's how we begin our transformation. Hang on. I think if I touch the buttons here, there we go. Okay, so step 3 for transformation is we're generally lost and we need to gain some understanding. And our old mindset is that there's disappointment, there's discouragement, there's loss, there's overload. How many of you on this call tonight, or maybe in the replay, if you can, write in the chat, how many of you have ever gone to a networking event and felt totally decimated? Like, why did I come? Why did I waste my time? There was nobody here that really connected with me. You feel overloaded. You impose on yourself a false reality, right? And then we begin to choose temptations over opportunities. And that, I love that, because a lot of us don't know the difference. What is a temptation versus an opportunity? A temptation takes us away from our focus, our intent, our purpose, and our goal. So one more time, a temptation takes us away from our focus, our intention, our purpose, and our goals. Opportunities do not. Opportunities may be temptations, but at the end, they always have an opportunity. Temptations, a lot of times, are not opportunities. So the new mindset is that we need to learn lessons to carry us to our destiny, right? We need to identify our next move. So when we're networking, Networking is very strategic. It's not just showing up. And if you accidentally get into a room, you need to know how to size that room up very, very quickly so that your time there doesn't create that old mindset of, why am I here anyway? And we need to look at networking. We're either going to win or we're going to learn. There's only going to be two paths. We're either going to win or we're going to learn. And so we need to be focused, intentional, and differentiate those temptations from opportunities. There are a lot of individuals that will tempt us to join programs, to join other conferences, to join networking, to let's go for coffee for 30 minutes, 45 minutes, an hour. If you're not sure why you're going, that is more of a temptation than an opportunity. The opportunity to speak to someone should always be connected to being able to serve either a goal of yours or a mutual goal of the two individuals. Step 4 is we're stuck and we want to move. We want to get into movement. How many times have you ever felt stuck, not knowing where to go, not knowing what to do, and not really wanting to spend your time, because time is actually more important than money, in a place that you don't know if you're going to go anywhere? So our old mindset is that we need to disconnect what we do and know who we are with what we're doing. A lot of times people go to network and they are completely scattered. They have no idea why they're there. They have no idea how they can leverage themselves. They have no idea how they can leverage this newfound connection. There is absolutely no idea how to do this. We believe that we don't have the opportunity to grow. So sometimes, especially Latinas, we tend to shrink a little bit and we don't go to the people that we think are untouchable. Now, I'll be very honest, when I met Sharon, I had no idea who Sharon was. Like, everyone in the room was starstruck by her. Here's a woman who sold 35 million books. And I had no idea who she was. And I sat there talking to her and connecting with her. And she and I became very, very close. Very sweet woman, such a good, kind-hearted person. I had no idea who she was. Perhaps if maybe I would have known, maybe I wouldn't have taken the risk that I did, but she was just another person in that room and we connected. So we believe that influencers are outside of our reach. We're limited by the support system that we have, and we're stuck by the life we create or fell into. Now, this is really important because our main network most of the time is our family or our closest friends. And if there's anybody here on the call that's an entrepreneur, we'll know that your family and your friends sometimes tell you that you're crazy. What are you going to do? What are you going to sell? How are you going to make money? Oh, that's crazy. Why don't you just go get a job? And so that sometimes is very disheartening because you have a purpose that's burned into your soul. And you know that getting a job isn't the way that it's going to work for you. So be careful of who you're sharing what with, because this old mindset will creep up often. What do we want? What do we want to look at is this new mindset. When we have a shift in truly connecting with who we are, we become unstoppable and connect our fullest potential. When we don't stop ourselves, when we don't put peros in our way, but, and we move forward because we're clear on what we want, that's where transformation happens. We have to create our own opportunities. And we don't create opportunities if we don't speak. So if we don't connect to people, if we don't connect our message, if we don't share what we have as our values, we cannot connect to other people. We have to actively seek out support systems and networks that think alike. So here's another homework assignment that I want to give you, ladies. I want you to think about who is in your network and where do you network? Are you networking on Instagram, or are you just using it for social purposes? Are you networking on Facebook, or are you just using it for social purposes? There's a big difference, and you'll see the pages, even if they're personal pages, the people that are there to network versus the people that are there to do business. I'm sorry, to do personal stuff. There's a big difference in the content that's produced, in the message that's being sent out. And it's okay to have a balance of both, but you need to have what you're going to put forward as a message. So that's the new mindset, right? You have to actively seek those opportunities. And those opportunities only occur if you take the risk and the chance of moving forward. So we have the power to change our circumstances. Most of us think, ya estamos aquí, llevamos 50 años haciendo lo mismo, nada va a cambiar, estamos en el mismo vecindario, right? We're in the same spot, nothing's going to change for us, we're in the same neighborhood, everything's going to be the same. And that's not true. It's only true if you don't move. If you move from where you're at, things change. Movement creates success. So step 5 is denial versus permission. We're always in denial, and we need to just kind of go towards a place of permission. So we become complacent and we accept status quo. I'm not going to go to these networking events because I don't meet anyone. I'll go with you because you need someone to go with, but I'm only going to go because you don't have anyone else to go with. So what just happened there? You're going to stick to the person you know. You're not going to go and network in a room because you're more comfortable sitting with the person next to you. We begin to believe the lies that we hear from others, or worse, that we tell ourselves. No one wants to buy from me. So we've already made up the mind of the person across from us. No one wants to talk to me. No one wants to hear about my business. We tell ourselves that we will never achieve. We're never going to have the success that Menganita has. We're never going to have the success that this person has. We'll never be able to network the way you network. We'll never be able to have the connections you have. And that's not true. And so we've created that ceiling for ourselves, and that ceiling limits us from what we're able to do. So we stop ourselves from what we instinctively know we need to do. The new mindset needs to be that we need to actively engage our energy to change our environment and our circumstances. If you've ever heard me speak before, I speak a lot about emotional energy and how that energy really can either make us uncertain or unstoppable. And so if we're uncertain, we're using all that energy to keep us uncertain. If we're unstoppable, then we're using all of our emotional energy to keep us moving and make us unstoppable. So we have to stop believing the lies and start asserting our belief systems. We have to start turning thoughts into actions, and practice makes progress, right? So none of what I've said will make a difference if we don't take action, if we don't do our audits, if we don't do our assessments. So we need to take steps into our growth and development, and you need to give yourself permission to take action, even if the action is imperfect. Now, as a high achiever as I am, that pains me to say. So I want you to know that that pains me. So I'd love to hear in the chat if anybody else here is a high achiever. And by me saying, perfection doesn't really exist, and we have to take action even if it's imperfect, I'd like to hear from you. I'd like to be able to see those comments, so when we have question and answers, we can address some of that. So the last step is really learning theory at its best, right? We get reinforced all the time. And what do we need? We need new reinforcement. So our old mindset is that we're engaged in dysfunctional patterns and relationships, and there is a huge typo on that. Working towards others' expectations. We have fear of failure and fear of success, and we have fear of the unknown. So when we're networking, we sometimes don't know what we're doing, and we come out with no connections, and then we feel horrible. And then it may happen again, and then we feel horrible. And then it happens again, and we feel horrible. Do you think at a fourth time you're going to go? You're not, because you're going to feel horrible. Has anyone here on the call tonight, or maybe you're listening to the replay, has that ever happened to anyone where you're in an event and you leave feeling so discouraged, even if you walked in encouraged? So what do we want to be thinking? We want to be able to establish new healthy patterns. So part of those healthy patterns is having a structure to network. We want expectations that are in line with reality. If there's 200 people in a room and the networking event is for 45 minutes, you are not going to talk to all 200 people. If you get to 5 to 10, that's great. If you go with otras comadres and you decide we're going to section the room, you can get more connections that way than if you did it all by yourself. So what are the new patterns that we need? How do we embrace that change of ourselves? That we're going to take the courage to step out and do things differently. And we're going to welcome all of these new opportunities as chances for growth. And remember what I said earlier, we're either going to win or we're going to learn. Those are our only two paths. So if it didn't quite go your way, that's okay. We learned, and we learned for the next time. So this isn't about going back. I love this quote. I don't know if anyone saw the movie Secretariat. It was always playing in my office in the background. And I always saw like the same clip because I guess I was seeing patients and I would come out at the same spot. And then one Saturday morning I got to see it, and it's an amazing movie, not only about the horse, but the woman who really takes over for the dad who passes away. And it's the story about this incredible woman in a field where it's all about men. And she makes this comment and she says, this isn't about going back. It's about life being ahead of you, and you run at it because you never know how far you can go unless you run. And that's what we need to remember when we're networking. So what are the 5 keys to powerful connections? Well, it's always going to start with you. I'm always going to start most of my presentations with you. And so who am I? That's key number 1. Key number 2 is values. What are our values? Key number 3, what are we aligned with? Key number 4 is we serve first. And key number 5 is our messaging. So we're going to get into the keys now. So who am I? Key number 1. So who are you? So we're going to have some homework here. So write this down. Who am I? Who are you? What are you about? If someone were to describe you, what would they say about you? And how can you leverage this of who you are in the relationship to best serve? I networked all the time before I got sick about 2 years ago. I had actually traveled probably for about a year and a half international, and I had been speaking on international stages. And one of the things that I would always say, and someone pulled me over and they said, I've learned so much. They were around me a lot. And they're like, I learned so much. You always ask someone, how can I support you? So I'd say, hi, nice to meet you. Great conversation, great talk, whatever it was that we were discussing. And then they'd tell me, I want to know more about them. So I'm interested about them. And then I would say, how can I support you? How can I support you? and you'd be interested in knowing that a lot of the how can I support you was, do you think you can write a blog for my website? Do you think that you can come speak at one of my events? Do you think that you can? So even though I was offering to support them, to help them, that's how they saw me to be able to support them. So I want you to begin to do that audit for yourself. Who are you? And what about you? What about you makes you uniquely different than the next person? Those are unique qualifiers, right? People see you and perceive you differently sometimes than we see ourselves. And so, how can you leverage who you are in terms of that relationship? So, key number 2 is values. And as you could see, because we're Latinas, this one I had to keep going down, 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 right? Because as Latinas, we have a lot of values. Values associated to our families, values associated to our culture, values associated to our gender. What is important to you? So I need you to write down key number 2, values. What is important to you? I need you to take a long, hard look and at least write down 5 values that are important to you. These are the things that are non-negotiable. These no one can change. What is your purpose? How are you staying true to your values? Or because you think there's a temptation or an opportunity, are you saying, well, it's not really aligned with my value, but it's okay because I want to make this connection desperately. Sometimes we lose ourselves when we do that. So I want you to learn to say yes to you and not yes to everyone. When you say yes to everyone, you have a hidden yes. And that hidden yes almost always is something that's hurting you. Can you do this for me? Yes. But that yes may mean, yes, I have to give something up. I have to not eat to make sure that I get there on time. Yes, you can have my time, even though I was going to just sit and read a book. Yes, I'll show up for your luncheon and speak at your luncheon, even though that may mean, yes, I won't have lunch because I'm going to be running to my next event. So be careful of what you're saying yes to and know what those values are, because when you know what your values are, the connecting for the networking becomes super, super important. So how do you identify yourself, your culture, your gender? How do you identify? We're now at the age, I'm old enough to know that a few years ago, or maybe more than a few years ago, maybe like 2 decades ago, I was known as a Hispanic. It took me a really long time to stop saying I'm Hispanic and then say I'm Latina. And now that I'm comfortable saying I'm Latina, now they go and change it on me and now I'm a Latinx. So who do you really identify with? And I'm like, Dios mío, if they change it one more time, like I'm going to have complete identity confusion. Because I started as Hispanic, I went to Latina, and now we're at Latinx.
Now you're on
How do you
brown.
identify?
And now they have the
Charlie, you're muted. You're muted. So hold on to the comment. Hold on to the comment because I think it's a great comment. So what ideals from your culture do you carry with you, right? Do you take with you? Are part of who you are. So part of my culture is I love to serve, right? Las Latinas, we love to serve. So I'm going to serve at the best capacity that I can. Something else that I found out from Latinas in networking is a lot of Latinas, even if they're in a room full of Latinos and Latinas, they feel that they don't belong. They don't share information because they feel that someone's going to judge them. So I always share the story with individuals. So I'm bilingual. And so the Americanos will tell me, oh, you don't have an accent. And as if I'm supposed to. And then when I started doing therapy and I had my patients and I was so proud, right? My mom like drilled Spanish into me when I would come home in kindergarten and I would come home speaking English. She'd be like, yo no te entiendo. And I'm like, well, if you don't understand me, then why are you telling me you don't understand me? Because I was sassy even at 5. And she's like, well, if you don't speak Spanish, we can't talk. And so she kind of forced me to speak Spanish. And so I was so proud when I opened up my private practice, when I got to speak with my patients. But then I got it from my patients. Usted habla el español de lo más bien. Usted no parece que usted se ha criado aquí. Right? So I was getting it both ways. If I spoke in English, the English population was telling me, you don't have an accent. And then I was getting it from my own people. Oh, you speak Spanish so fluently. I can't believe you don't have an accent. So it was both ways that it was. So we have to know where we belong and how do we communicate that? And how do you leverage being a woman and being a Latina when you're in these networking spaces? So I don't know if anyone has ever had these experiences or has ever thought of networking from the perspective of values. But values become super important when we're high level networking and we're high level collaborating, because you will have individuals that do not have the same values that you do. And you have to make a decision of what you need to do with that relationship. So key number 3 is alignment. So how does this relationship align with my purpose and with my life? How does it align with my business? How am I serving this relationship? And how is this relationship serving me? And we have to, at some point, if we have a relationship, is it still serving either party? Because maybe we think we should stay together, like a bad breakup, but you're not serving each other anymore. Your businesses have grown, your lives have grown in different directions, but the alignment is no longer there. So these are things that you have to consider. So key number 3, I want you to write this down, right? Key number 3, alignment. I want you to look back at your network. Are you still aligned with the individuals that you're networking? How long has it been since you've added someone new to your network? A lot of us find a network and then we don't move from it. We don't constantly change it. Key number 4 is that we serve first. That becomes crucial. What is important to you and what is your purpose? Right? How do we stay true to your values and how do you say yes to you? So when we serve first, what is important to you? I know what's important to me. I know what I'm willing to give, and I'm going to serve first from that perspective. It's always great for someone to serve us, but if I can serve first, what can I do to support you? How can I be of support to you? Even if you throw out the craziest of ideas to someone. Someone said to me the other day, oh, what I really need is someone to just be on top of me. We were in a co-working group. Someone knew that I meant networking. And she said, what I really need is someone to just really kind of like peek in on me. I wish someone could peek in on me while I get these taxes done. And I said, do you want me to text you? And she kind of like, she's like, would you? And I'm like, yeah, absolutely. I said, if that's what you need, if you need someone to peek in on you, I said, I'm willing to peek in on you if that's what you need. And so I served, and it was interesting because there was 3 of us in the room. And then I had served both women. And then the other woman said, I feel so bad because we didn't ask you what we can do for you. Is there something we can do for you? So when you serve first, trust me, you will get it back in return, whether it's from the individual that's across from you or at a later date or someone else that's in the room. And key number 5 is messaging. So how do you message yourself when you're either in person or online? We have to look at our communication. You have to define your comfort zone. And then define your comfort zone. I have realized that a lot of women, we stay with what's really, really comfortable and something that we're used to. So I'm going to challenge everyone here in this room is to do something uncomfortable. Pick something small. Doesn't matter what it is, something small that makes you feel uncomfortable. And do that repeatedly, at least for a week. You will begin to see why it makes you uncomfortable and the importance of having that in your life. The more uncomfortable you are in the small steps, the more comfortable you will become in the big steps. Because we need to be able to put whatever you're thinking into action. That's how we're going to get movement. That's how we're going to get a greater network. That's how we're going to expand. And we need to have a plan of action. So here are some things that I want you ladies to work on for your next networking event, whether it's here at La Comadres or whether you're doing a different networking event, is I want you to plan your networking. And we're going to use these 5 keys, these 5 steps in order to plan your networking. We want to know who you are, and I want you to know who's in the room with you. So if it's an event that you signed in, go back and see who are the speakers, who's going to be in the room. Some of the digital events will show you who's in the room with you, who said yes, who's going to go to that event. Are you connected with them already online? Can you send them a message? Hi, my name is so-and-so. I saw that we're both registered for whatever the event is. I would love to be able to connect with you beforehand. Ask them something about themselves. People love to talk about themselves. I would love to know more about your business, more about your interests, more about whatever it is of why you're networking. Mine is normally business. I would love to know more about your business. And I always follow that question up with, I would love to know more about your business and how I can best support you. So I make that serve right in that conversation. The more you know who you are, the stronger your message becomes. I empower Latinas. I empower a lot of other people, but when I'm in a room with Latinas, like I empower Latinas. That's what I do. I've been building, I've been back now since I'm healthier. I'm rebuilding my brands. And we just created, which I'm totally excited for, a coaching program, right? And it was based off of market research. I spent weeks doing market research with Latinas. And I'm totally excited about that, totally excited about having connected with all these women. And they all responded. And they all responded, hey, you know, some of them I knew personally, some I was connected with. I was like, hi, we haven't talked in a while. You know, I've been kind of out of commission. I'm back, you know, I'm feeling better. And I wanted to know, would you share some of your time with me to help me in some of my market research that I'm doing? I would love to see if there's something that I can share with you or offer you for doing this for me. And most individuals were like, I just feel so honored that someone can listen to what I have to say. So if that means anything to any of you here listening or on the replay, that's really crucial. There's a lot of us that have things that are powerful to say. We just don't know how to get it out and how to collaborate with others. So Maria, I want to be able to honor questions and stuff. This link here is for later if you ladies enjoyed the presentation, and I would love some feedback. So it's a feedback form. So if you would love to maybe take a picture of it, because I don't think you can click on it from your screen. I would love that. But Maria, we have time. So I'm not a hard stop at 8 if you're not, but I would love to open up the conversation and see what the chat says and anything else.
Absolutely. So Charlie, I know you had a comment, so why don't you bring your comment forward?
Hi. So my comment, you made a comment about being Latina, and I actually went to an event where people got huffy with me because I said, well, I'm Latina, and they said, oh, no, 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 you're brown. And I'm like, what the hell is brown? I'm not brown. I'm like, I'm not even trigueña, I'm Latina. And, so we've gone from Hispanic to Latina to Latinx to brown. And so it is that piece of feeling comfortable just to be able to say, well, this is who I am. This is how I identify myself, as opposed to allowing somebody else to identify us, to put us in that little box that they feel comfortable with.
Well, what's important, and I'm telling you, I spoke with a lot of Latinas in like a 2-week period of time doing my market research. And it didn't matter who the person was. It could be a young person, an older person. And at my age now, I always say the emphasis is on the not on the old. So, older individuals, individuals with light skin, dark skin, short hair, long, it didn't matter. Every single woman said, I don't feel like I belong. I don't feel like, if I'm too dark, they tell me, well, you're really more, Black than you are Latina. And they're like, I'm Latina. Like, I eat arroz con gandule. Like, I'm Latina, right? And there are people who are like, well, your skin complexion is too white, or your name is too Anglo, or your hair is not curly enough. And these are comments made from one Latina to another, and they don't feel like they belong in that group. So we need to really know who we are. Like, you need to know who you are in relation to the world that you're in. It's very, very important. When I speak on diversity, and I did that was the topic this weekend that they asked me to speak at, was, how do you view diversity in terms of leadership? And I said, well, diversity isn't just race, culture. I'm like, it's intellectual ability, it's physical capability. There's diversity in all types. And if we're not able to make everyone feel like they belong in the group we're in, then we have a problem. And so as Latinas, even if we're in a room full of Latinas, we have to understand that there are people around us that don't feel that they belong. That's a huge problem. So thank you, Charlie, for bringing that up. Any other questions or comments or thoughts?
Isaura, I had a question.
Okay, and I know
saying,
Cecilia's hand was up. So who was that had a question?
This is Maria.
Okay, Maria.
Let me turn on my video. Oh, I should open my window, huh? Anyway, so at the beginning you were telling us about how, it's not so much about working the room, it's about making the connections and preparing beforehand and everything. And it's not just collecting the business cards, it's, making yourself little notes about, a specific thing and whatever. So, okay, so we meet tonight, okay? And I have your number, I have your email and everything. So how do now, okay, so I'm going to look you up on LinkedIn and I'm going to follow, and maybe you'll follow me, but then where do we go from here? How do I keep that connection if I'm not going to see you again until like next year's conference?
So that's where social media becomes crucial, right? And that's why I said some of us are not keen on taking things online. We're, some of us were, born and raised in you meet face to face. That's the only way that there's interactions. There can't be interactions otherwise. That's where you connect with individuals. So someone that you newly connect with, get to know who they are. And how do we know if their values align? So going back to values and alignment, you need to know your values and what you're aligned with. So you go understanding who they are through their social media profile. So if it's LinkedIn, go to their profile, see what articles, have they written any articles? Are they commenting? I get a lot of connection requests when individuals in my network make a comment, and I'll read it and I'll make a comment. I'm like, wow, this is a fascinating story. And I'll congratulate whoever they congratulated. I don't know the person, but I'm like, thank you so much for sharing. Like, this was such an inspirational story. And a lot of times it's Latinas, and I'm like, this is so great to see a Latina being so powerful and standing in her power. I I congratulate the person. I give something to them first. And then I will get always a response back. I mean, it has never failed me. I always get a response back. So the way you nurture, right? Because what you're talking about, Maria, is nurturing. So think about if you meet someone for this first time and you want to go on a date, you don't call them back 3 years later. You want to nurture, right? Hey, good morning, just checking in. How are you? We nurture. How do we nurture in this time of COVID? Online. So if you're not comfortable going online, do something uncomfortable that has nothing to do with being online and make yourself comfortable. Build up being uncomfortable. Being uncomfortable provokes anxiety. Anxiety alleviates itself when we build up the resources to no longer be uncomfortable. So there is a madness to my method here. It's not just like, oh, algo uncomfortable and baquechifla. No, it's we're building up our resources in order so that when things get a little bit harder or a little bit more difficult, we already have in the background things that worked for us. And we know I did something that was uncomfortable and I survived.
Sandra Gutierrez, do you want to speak your question, or you want me to ask it?
Cecilia had a question. Can we have Cecilia go? I'm sorry,
Sure.
Maria.
No?
Cecilia?
Where's Cecilia?
She's down here somewhere in a beautiful, like, white and blue dress.
Hi.
Hi, Cecilia.
My background has primarily been in diversity, equity, inclusion. I've been doing it as a consultant for 22 years. I did it for AT&T for 13 years, and now I'm doing it in Austin for TASB. Just started the role. One of the things about our identity, you know, and in what label we should allow people to place on us, or we should allow to label ourselves, I think really comes from the place of we want to find our group, and we want to feel this sisterhood with our group. And women can be tough with women, period. We can be really hard on each other. And so when we're amongst our cultural group, we get this sense of safety and this sense of commonality and the sense of being family. So if we're ever slighted in any way by anyone in that group, that can really be detrimental. It can really be painful for us and I will use the term Latina. That's the term I'm comfortable with. I never embraced Hispanic. There's no Hispanic country. There's no Hispanic land. There's no Hispanic language. There's no Hispanic people. It was a made up word to group us all together by some non-Hispanic person. So I will probably never embrace that term, knowing that. But Latina, I'm comfortable with. And when I think about Latinx, I think, well, that's being very progressive. We're trying to pull together both gender identity and culture. And for me, I prefer to have those separate because they are completely separate dimensions that also have otherness involved in both. And they need to be handled differently because of the dimension that they are. So what I often say around labels is, it doesn't matter what you call me. It doesn't matter what the label is. It doesn't matter what the politically correct thing to say is. If you are still uncomfortable with me because of my difference, then we really haven't gone very far at all. And that's where the work needs to be, whether it's the difference that you see on the outside or whether it's the difference based on any dimension of diversity. If you are still uncomfortable with me, or I am comfortable with you because of that difference, that's where the work needs to lie. That's where we need to start these connections and relationships and understanding and just, you know, holding each other's hands and moving forward together. So that's all I had to say.
Cecilia, thank you so much for the comment. And I think that that's important for us to recognize that sometimes we try to stick to the same networking that we're used to. And that could be a detriment because we need to expand our reach. And that's why we need to know the purpose of why we're there. I went once to a Hispanic sales networking. I think that's what it was called. It was called the Hispanic Sales Network event. It was I still have friends from there. Many, many moons ago, it was primarily all men were in that room. And so I went, I was like, oh, it's a networking event. I would love to go. I was uncomfortable because I'm a psychologist. All I went to were psychology events. And I thought it was like so neat. I was like, oh, and it's right here and it's people from Chicago and this would be so nice. And I'll never forget, we're in a circle and everyone, we were outside. It was, mingle time and there must have been like 10 individuals. I was one of them. I think I was one of the only women in that circle. And everyone's going around. And they're like, oh, I'm an bank investor and I'm do this and the other. And they're like, and what do you do? And I'm like, I'm a psychologist. And the guys were like, are you at the right event? And I was like, yeah, I'm at the right event. I'm like, I wanted to come. And except for cheated the whole night. Right? Like we've got a psychologist who's, peeking in on us, but I made friends in that event and they are still connected to me. And this has been probably a good 15, 16 years. And if I need something in business, they're the ones I go to. And if they need something for psychology, they come to me. So again, we have to think outside that box. Mm-hmm. And I think Sandra had something, or Maria, you said Sandra had a question.
Sandra had a question. Sandra,
Yes.
you still with us?
Sandra, she's so beautiful. It's so nice to see you.
Nice to see you too. My question was like, how do you met? So I was, born and raised in New York, and I moved to Washington State. Very white, very, and actually it's the first time. I used to live in DC as well, but it's the first time here where I was like, I can fit in anywhere, but Washington State has challenged me. So I've done a good job of like going to random networking events, finding community in different places, but I still miss, being with Latinas and really with people that I can trust, like I feel at home with. And so how do you find community, nurturing insanity in such white male dominated spaces? What are some tips?
Well, it's interesting. I think it's about your level of comfort and knowing yourself, Sandra. I don't know if you all knew, but like, I don't think I ever told you, I went to Villanova. And when I went to Villanova, I mean, it's still very Anglo, but when I went to Villanova, I was one of 25 Latinos in the whole university. There was about 6,000 to 7,000 people in the university. I was one of 25 Latinos that were at the university. And that included the law school and the graduate programs that we had. So I was really like a token to everybody. And people would be like, oh, I know how to speak Spanish. And then I would be like, oh, and I would say something and they're like, oh no, but like you really speak Spanish, because they thought that high school Spanish was the same. So knowing what your level of comfort is becomes really important. That for me was, I think, the first time where I was a fish out of water. Here I am, New York, New Jersey, plátanos on every corner, things that were familiar to me, all of a sudden were gone. And I'm surrounded by people that don't know my language, don't know my culture, don't understand why I speak with my hands and why I'm so emotive. And it took to learning who was around me and what I was comfortable with and how I could present my most authentic self and speak my voice to, I don't want to say fit in, but to stand out in the rooms I was in. And so, Sandra, that's going to be the recommendation I give to you. Be an observer of who is around you, right? Do your homework. I said that right from the beginning. right? We need to know the rooms we are in. Do your homework, see who's around you, connect if you can on things that are other than culture, other than race, other than ethnicity, other than language. Connect on something that way. That will make it easier for you. And because I'm a psychologist, because of my training, you know, I've always been taught there is something that you can like about the person across from you. And so I've always had to dig in deep, and I have to think, like, what is it about this person that I really admire? And give that first. Hey, I see that you're doing this. I think that's so wonderful. No te va a matar giving someone a compliment.
No, I think for me, the challenge was that I did that a lot, that I burnt myself out. Like literally, like I would be like, here's my business card, what you need, let's connect, let's get coffee, blah, blah, blah. I was like done. After a while, I was like, I can't do this anymore.
I think, Sandra, if you look at your values and you save that energy to connect with the people that really align with the values that you have, because that's the thing. You hand out card after card after card, you're not going to connect with everybody.
No.
And, you know, going back to Maria's original question, like, how do you follow up with people? I have to tell you, like, even for me, it's overwhelming. So there were events where I would come back where people would literally me estaban tirando cards, right? Because I was on stage and I was speaking, and they're like, here, I want to connect with you. And I would come back with like 100 cards at the end of the night, 150 cards. You know, I collected probably close to 2,000 cards at one point. That's a lot of nurturing that you have to do. That's a lot of energy. So I think, Sandra, if you do it very targeted and very specific, that's going to yield you the better contact. It's better to have 2 or 3 strong connections than 30 that go nowhere. Because those 2 or 3 strong connections are going to catapult you to where you want to be.
Gloria has a question. Gloria?
Yes, hi.
Hi, Gloria.
Thank you so much for your time and your wisdom. I really appreciate you taking the time today. I have a comment and a question. My comment is, I'm very struck by the research findings that Latinas in general feel like they don't belong. I mean, that just is very striking to me because that has been my experience. It doesn't matter sort of what the context says, even among Latinas, right? And so I just encourage, you know, I don't know if it's possible to do a part 2, but I would love to know more about that research, publish a book, or if you have any plans on that, because I think it's just a powerful, like, aha, like, oh my goodness, it's happening to so many of us, right? I'm not alone. Yeah. Okay, so that was my comment. And then my question is, what you know, from your perspective in terms of networking, what are your words of wisdom for introverts, right? So from my perspective, networking is all really geared for those extroverts. You know, it comes easy to them, they get energized. And what advice do you have for those of us that are introverts?
So Gloria, I'm going to give you a secret about me. I happen to be like a closet introvert.
Oh, wow.
Right? You could never tell porque hablo mucho, right? And my son, who's like a big introvert, one day said to me, Mommy, I could never, and my son is so strong, he's such a leader. He said, I could never be like you. He goes, look at you standing up on those stages. And I'm like, mijito, if you only knew. I'm like, I was as bad as you or worse than you, right? I would be very, very quiet. So I don't work a room the way maybe you might think I work a room. I work a room very strategically. So Gloria, for the introverts, that's where the power is at. The power is in our intellect. Why? Because we keep to ourselves. We take notes. We'd rather speak later than first. We might let a room die down before we connect with someone. Does that all sound familiar? So what I would do is, if you know that you're going into a particular room, it is crucial to know who is in the room with you. it is crucial to know who the speakers are. There is no reason why you cannot connect with any of the speakers at all. If you do the work and you know who you are and you know your value and you know what your values are for life, for business, it comes across very clearly. It was interesting. One of the things when the woman reached out to me, I think it was like Saturday, she was ahead of time because they were in London. She reached out to me and she goes, when you left, she's like, when you logged off, everyone said what humility Dr. González has, even though like they had my bio there. They're like, what humility you have, because that's just who I am. And it comes through my messaging, right? And so as powerful of a speaker as I may be, I'm an introvert. So I like to plan before I get to an event. I want to know who are my speakers? Do I know any of the speakers? Who can I connect with? How can I make that connection perhaps ahead of time? And if I don't do it ahead of time, I want to make it my business that when I get there, and if there's a pre-event, that I catch an eye and introduce myself at least. And say, oh my gosh, I'm so glad we're speaking on the same stage. I'm so looking forward to hearing you speak. Even saying something like that, Gloria, for an introvert, I know is like a huge deal, but it makes you step outside that comfort zone that you sit in, that the introverts sit in. We don't want to speak out. We don't want to call attention. We don't want people to be looking at us when we're commenting. So if a person has an assistant with them, you might want to go the back way too and get the assistant to kind of canoodle you in or get you some private time. That's another way. Don't feel bad about standing in line. I know that a lot of people don't like that, but that sometimes is the only way. Like I know when I was speaking, I didn't care how long the line was. Yo saludaba a todo el mundo. Anyone who was there to catch a word with me or to give me some feedback or to say something, I always stayed. And I always made it a point like, do me a favor, please just connect with me on LinkedIn and tell me you saw me here. So when you're at an event, if you get someone's card, please make sure that you let them know where you know them from. People do like to connect. And so if you think, right, that's the old mindset. I'm not going to do it because they're saying that to everybody. They don't really care. If you think that way, then we don't have the new mindset, which is nothing is impossible. Right? So I hope that was maybe answering your question and beneficial.
Yes, it was all, you were wonderful. We want to say thank you to you for joining us tonight. And I know, we'll have this recording out next week for everyone, and we'll send out an email and we will share the evaluations we collect with you. But, everybody, round of applause. And thank you so much. And now that you have, I put in the chat her Facebook and her LinkedIn address. So please connect with her and let her know that you met her here at Las Comadres Speaker Series. And Las Comadres también is on LinkedIn. So please follow us as well. Okay.
And if there's any other questions that didn't get answered tonight, feel free to connect with me and ask. Okay. It would be my pleasure.
All right. Thank you, Isaura. Thank you, everyone, for joining us tonight.
Thank you.
Have a good night.
Thank you.
good
Bye,
night.
ladies. I hope you
Bye.
connect. Bye.
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 Bye.